to good friends, the ones we hold dear, the ones who will tell us what we need to hear, the ones who love us, right or wrong, and to all those good friends that give you this song.
Well, hello, good friends, and welcome back to The Last Walk, Remember When, with your host, Ron Baumbach. We're going back in time again to the fun times, so get up off your easy chair, walk over to your cupboard. In fact, go to that drawer in the kitchen, the one with all the junk and the pens and the keys, the scotch tape, you name it. Reach way in the back and you'll find a Pez. Remember the Pez when you were a kid? And how about go into the refrigerator, take out some milk and some cocoa marsh. In fact, maybe we can actually get a free Pez if you buy a cocoa marsh. At least this was this commercial said way back in the day. Let's take a listen.
3, 2, 1, fire! And there he goes, the first man in space, the Cocoa Martian Pez Space Trooper.
Look, he's on the moon. He's on Mars. And it's always handy when it's time for Pez candy. Just fill him with the Pez candy refill. Gee, he's fun. Have one.
And now the greatest free offer ever. 2 free gifts. The Cocoa Martian Pez Space Trooper and the Pez Candy Refill. Yours absolutely free when you buy Cocoa Marsh. They're attached only on Cocoa Marsh. You know how good chocolatey Cocoa Marsh is in milk and ice cream.
It's real delicious. 'Cause it's real chocolatey.
So don't wait. Be first to get these 2 free gifts. Cocoa Martian Pez Space Trooper and Pez Candy Refill at your store now.
So go back in your easy chair, turn on your lava lamp, close your eyes. We're going back in time to the 1970s. Name that theme song. Get ready, it's storytelling time. The Last Walk is back.
Life is too short, we get only one turn. With luck we find beauty, but we sometimes get burned. But if you've had a true friend, or perhaps love, you've experienced a piece of heaven above.
Well, friends, we had such a good response to our theme songs from the 50s and 60s. Let's keep rolling the dice. Let's go on to the 70s. Can you name this theme song from the 1970s? Think back, close your eyes, put yourself back in time to 1970. You're in front of your TV set with your family, you turn it on, and on comes this show.
Not getting hassled, not getting hustled, keeping your head above water, making a way when you can.
Temporary layoffs,
Good times, easy credit rip-offs. Good times,
scratching and surviving.
good times, hanging in a job.
Yes, it was good times. I enjoyed that one, and I enjoyed this one a lot. It starred 3 beautiful young women. Some of them you probably had in your locker room or in your college dormitory on the posters. And a gentleman who was their leader, who I always got confused with the father on Happy Days. I got confused with a lot of these people back then. But I'm sure you enjoyed this show. Can you name it from the theme song? Yes, it was Charlie's Angels. And then we watched another one with an older man and his son. If memory serves me well, I believe the lead character was a really, really big name in comedy back in the 70s. Yes, that was Sanford and Son, starring the late great Red Fox. Ironically enough, his real name was John Elroy Sanford. He was known as the king of the party records in the 50s and 60s. Let's keep this show going. Let's keep it moving along. Can you name this one? Starring a late great actor who had a really cool part in his wonderful show with two beautiful co-stars. What's the name of the show?
Come and knock on our door.
Come and knock on our door.
We've been waiting for you.
We've been waiting for you.
Where the kisses are hers and his, three's company too. Come and dance on our floor.
Come and dance on our floor.
Take a step that is new.
Take a step that is new.
We've a lovable space that needs your face. Three's.
Yes, that's Three's Company with John Ritter, Suzanne Summers, Joyce DeWitt, and the wonderful comedian Don Knotts. And now, are you up for this one? Let's keep moving along, singing that song, TV shows from the 70s. And I bet you wish you had a teacher like this.
Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out. Welcome back to that same old place that you laughed about. Well, the names have all changed since you hung around. But those.
Yes, welcome back, Connor. Starring Gabe Kaplan, and we first met a guy named Horseshack and Vinnie Barbarino, John Travolta. Things were happy back then. We were really happy.
The weekend comes, my cycle hums, ready to race to you. These days are right. These days are right. Goodbye gray sky, hello blue. There's nothing can hold me when I hold you. It feels so right, it can't be wrong. Rockin' and roll.
Yeah, that's when the Fonz first met Opie. Ron Howard on Happy Days and Henry Winkler as the Fonz. We've had the happy times with Erin Moran and a bunch of the people in the cast. Donnie Most, and he was on it back then. It was a really cool, fun time show. I think it took off from that movie American Graffiti. I'm not sure, but I could be right. But I know I'm right about this one. This followed All in the Family. I believe the son was a friend with Sally Struthers, and the rest is TV history.
Well, we're moving on up to the east side, to a deluxe apartment in the sky. We're moving on up to the east side. We finally got a piece of the pie.
Yes, the Jeffersons. I think he owned a dry cleaning business and he did really well in something, and he moved up to the east side with his son. I think his name was Lionel. Now back in the 70s, if you enjoyed a beer, you thought of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. And there were two girls from Milwaukee who had a really fun time. Their names were
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Schlemiel, Schlemazel, Haas and Beff Incorporated.
We're gonna do it. Give us any chance, we'll take it. Read us any rule, we'll break it. We're gonna make our dreams come true. Do it our way. Nothing's gonna.
That was Laverne and Shirley. And there was a show that had I think it was the most important or the most watched finale ever in TV history. It was on for many, many years. It starred an icon in TV history, Alan Alda. Of course, that was MASH. What a really good classic TV show. Speaking of classics, there was a guy named Little Joe, who was one of the young son, I believe, on Bonanza, who moved up from Bonanza, left Long Green, and went to a little bit of a town in the country. And he had his own little house. Do you recall this one? That's The Little House on the Prairie with Michael Landon. Now on Saturday evenings, we all gathered around the TV tube. We watched a woman who was made famous with her legs initially, then with her acting ability with a fellow named Dick Van Dyke. And the opening scene showed her throwing a hat in the air. And my nephew and niece in Florida will look at that and say the woman in the background looks like their grandmother, my mom. But it certainly wasn't. But whenever I saw that opening scene, I said, oh, my mom's in that show. You recall this show? I'm sure you enjoyed it. I'm sure you watched it. And we all did.
How will you make it on your own? This world is awfully big. Girl, this time you're all alone. But it's time you started living. It's time you let someone else do some giving.
Yes, of course, that was the Mary Tyler Moore Show, starring Mary and Ted Baxter, or Ted Knight, and the fellow from Love Boat, I forget his name right now, whatever his name was, and Rhoda Morgenstern, and Betty White, and of course we had, after Mary Tyler Moore was on, we watched Rhoda. Now, a bit of trivia is interesting. The theme song from the Mary Tyler Moore Show, Love Is All Around, was written by a fellow named Sonny Curtis, who was an original cricket along with Buddy Holly. And they're both obviously in the Hall of Fame. But Buddy Holly and Sonny Curtis connected to Mary Tyler Moore. Thanks, my buddy Mike, for bringing this up to me as a cool connection. But there was another show on that was more of a cops type show, which you probably enjoyed. I was not a big cop guy, but maybe you were. What do you think about this one? Yes, that was Starsky and Hutch. And I have no real memories of Starsky and Hutch because I didn't really watch the show. Maybe you could tell me your memories. And you probably recall this one. I remember, I didn't really watch this one either that much, but I remember watching the end of the show, or the beginning of the show, when all the lights went out one by one in the windows. The show was called The Waltons. Now, here's one I did watch. Archie's wife, Edith, her cousin Maud, who had her own show. She was on a couple of times. A totally different person than Archie. And it was a really, really impressive show. And tough woman.
Lady Godiva was a freedom rider. She didn't care if the whole world would. Joan of Arc with the Lord to guide her. She was a sister who really could. Isadora was the first bra burner. Ain't you glad she showed up? Oh, yeah! And when the country...
Yeah, that was B. Arthur in Maud. And as I mentioned, she was a spin-off from a really cool show, which you may get the name of it from hearing the tune of this one right now.
Boy, the way Glenn Miller played
songs that made the hit parade.
Guys like us, we had it made. Those were the days.
And you knew where you were then.
Girls were girls and men were men. Mr. Wick.
Yes, of course, that was All in the Family. A really, really eventful show that basically was a cultural change in America. Archie Bunker and his wife Edith, and Meathead and his daughter, I think Princess she may have been called, and his cousin B. Arthur, Maud, and Lionel and the family from the Jeffersons. What a really, really enticing show. There was another one we're going to play right now, which was the beginning of a career that we saw on TV of a guy named Billy Crystal, to recall the show that he was in way back when. Yes, that was indeed Soap, a real classic on ABC TV. I recall one of my favorite characters on that show was a gentleman named Benson. He may have been the butler or whatever, but later on he got his own show. A really impressive guy, impressive show, and a real good comedian. Benson and Soap, spin-offs can live on forever. Now this one had a lot of people singing. I didn't really watch it that much either, but a lot of people did, and I'm sure you were one of the ones who did, who made it a legend.
Hello world is a song that we're singing. Come on, get happy. A whole lot of loving is what we'll be bringing. We'll make you happy. We have a dream, we go traveling together.
Of course, that was the Partridge Family, which I always got confused with the Brady Bunch, but that was me. Now, there was one show I did enjoy on ABC also, was a show starring Hal Linden. And he had a bunch of characters in a police station, I think in Manhattan. The name of the show was the following. Listen to the tune and name that show. Yes, of course, that's Barney Miller. Now, I mentioned before the Partridge Family. The other show that my mind was very similar is coming up right now. Can you name it? Marsha, Marsha, Marsha.
Here's the story of a lovely lady who was bringing up three very lovely girls. All of them had hair of gold, like their mother, the youngest one in curls.
It's a story of a man named Brady who was busy with three boys of his own.
Yes, of course, the Brady Bunch, starring one of my all-time favorite actresses, Florence Henderson, and I think Maureen McCormick was Marsha. And she was, in fact, I think, on Dancing with the Stars, as was Florence Henderson, the late and great Florence Henderson. A beautiful woman for all her years of acting and of life. Now, the next few shows, I don't recall ever watching, but perhaps you did. Can you recall the name of the show from listening to this clip? If you can, you win recognition. As I mentioned, I wasn't that big on the medical and detective shows and the cops and robbers shows. That was called Chips. Now, do you recall this one? If you were into the ER and medical stuff, I bet your bottom dollar you watched this show. I gave you enough hints. The name of the show was Emergency. Now, the following show is one more in this trifecta of ones that I don't think I ever really saw. It was more of a, I think, detective series. Let's see how many people can get it. That was McCloud. And I'm up in the air with a cloud. I know what clouds are now. They hide all our files. Don't know how in the world this thing works. There's a cloud up there somewhere. Everybody has a cloud. Everyone's paying for files in the cloud. And we store them, we save them, we pull them back down. But back in the 70s, there was a guy named Mick Cloud who probably had no clue what today's cloud was all about. But the next show was one I really enjoyed. My wife and I would watch it on Saturday evenings. It was a short guy who looked up in the sky and said, "The plane, the plane." And the gentleman was the lead, the star, also went on to sell some cars, I think Cordobas, on commercials. Do you recall the name of this show? It was a really fun time and took you away from reality on Saturday evenings. Of course, that was Fantasy Island. What a really great show. It's available, I believe, now on some TV stations that show the old shows from the past, which we have seen, and somehow the shows we watch now aren't the same as they were when we watched them 50 years ago. Now, the next one was one, ironically, that came back. It's back in existence. And I'm lucky enough and proud enough to have a nephew who's an actor who starred in this show in a couple of episodes about a year ago. Can you guess the name of the show? Of course, that was Hawaii Five-0, a great TV show in my mind. Now, the next one was also a great TV show. It starred a guy who had a button-down mind, made a great career on records and on different TV shows. Then he had his own TV show. He had a couple of them, in fact. I think you really enjoyed his comedy, his humor. And the name of this show was called... Yes, that was the Bob Newhart Show, one of my all-time favorite comedians. But thinking back now, I don't recall if that was a Bob Newhart Show where he had that psychiatrist's office, or was it Bob Newhart Show where he had the bed and breakfast up in Vermont with a bunch of guys who worked for him with the same last name or the same first name. What do you think it was? You probably know a lot more than me. A lot of people know a lot more than me. What do you think it is? The next one was about some really incredible woman who was stronger than most of any people who walked the earth. What do you think the name of this show is? Yes, that was Bionic Woman. And I wondered what would happen if they had the Bionic Woman come and make a visit to the next show. What would you think, and what's the name of this show coming up?
All the world is waiting for you and the power you possess. In your satin tights, fighting for your rights, and the old red, white, and blue. Wonder Woman.
Yes, that's Wonder Woman. Get my drift? Wonder Woman, Bionic Woman? Forget it. Now, this show is meant for kids, but it had a great deal of adult themes and adult comedy throughout the show, especially those two guys who sat up in the loft, the balcony area.
It's time to play the music. It's time to light the light. It's time to meet the Muppets on the Muppet Show tonight.
It's time to put on makeup.
Yes, it's a Muppet Show. Imagine that. It was on prime time, the Muppet Show. Now, my kids, when they were little, they watched a show called Fraggle Rock. I don't know if that was on the 70s or 80s. Maybe the 80s. Maybe we'll get that in a future series.
Oh, I've been so lucky and I've been so blessed. In spite of my failings, I've found success. For I've known love and I've known good times, and I have known friendship and written some rhymes.
You've been listening to The Last Walk, Remember When. And we've been going back in time to the fun times, 1970s, the TV shows of our lives, and the theme songs, playing a game, Guess the Theme Song. I'm indebted to YouTube and the people from Guess the 70s TV show theme songs for working this effort to put it all together and put it on YouTube. What a great thing you did, and a great site to capture all those memories. And of course, a great thanks to Paul Cassone for the wonderful song He Is the Good Friends heard throughout our show. And I'm indebted to my good buddy Mike, my college roommate, where he worked so hard in the studio in the great state of Tennessee to make our show and our voice sound so much better. And Mike shared with me the information about Pez and Coco Marsh, the commercial we heard in the way back beginning of this show. And did you know that Pez was actually made to help people stop smoking? The container was made to be like a cigarette lighter. Who knew these things? Well, a guy on YouTube named, wow, I never knew that, was the one who put that on about Pez. And the Coco Marsh Pez commercial was on TV Days on YouTube. The book, The Last Walk on a Block, is available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. It's in Nook, print, and Kindle versions. Until next time, have a great weekend. Remember when.
Here's to good friends, the ones we hold dear, the ones who will tell us what we need to hear, the ones who love us right or wrong. And to all those good friends who give you this song. And to all those good friends who give you this song.